This is TWiT.
Not one, but two big devices were announced today.
Ooh,
look
at that pretty. Oh, look at the green.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I've never been into green, but that green, it's screaming to me.
Look at you guys showing off your new sexy stuff.
It really is sexy, though. Look at that design language.
Let's hand this OnePlus 8 to you.
Oh,
does that work? Let me. You come back with it.
Oh, wrong side. Wait, that side. There we go. There it is.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a little far, Jason.
We could have planned this a little better. The OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro, both a thing as of this morning. There was an announcement, and I don't know. This is kind of a big change, turning point for OnePlus. We've seen year after year after year, ever since the OnePlus One. OnePlus has been a company built around the idea that it can bring innovation, it can bring quality, everything that true fans of Android want out of a phone for a lower price than what everybody else is doing. Flagship killer, of course, they would often say. Primarily, I think people really identified with the OnePlus brand because they were making solid hardware, solid experience, and you weren't paying premium prices for it. You were really kind of getting a deal. But every single year, that price inches up. And in this time around, it isn't inching up. Like, literally, they have a flagship now. It is a solid flagship, the OnePlus 8 Pro, that goes toe-to-toe with basically any of the flagships that are really out there right now. Is maybe missing a couple of features that you care about, but the things that they've filled in the gaps that they've always, there have always been critics that say, yeah, well, it's great. You can get a OnePlus phone, but you don't get wireless charging. You don't get water and dust, proofing of any kind. And now you do. And in fact, from a wireless charging perspective, this is the OnePlus 8 charger. This only works with the 8 Pro, I should say. The OnePlus 8 is not wireless charging enabled, but this is it 30 watts? I think it's 30 or 40 watts. It's 30 watts wireless.
30 watts.
So you stick your phone on here and it charges like ridiculously fast. I wish I had written down the amount of time that it takes. Nick, you probably know. You've written like a whole encyclopedia about OnePlus in the last few days. What are your thoughts? Because you have both of these phones. What do you think?
Honestly, before they came out, I was a little bit skeptical. Because OnePlus has this reputation to live up to, and the rumors regarding the price were pretty much on point to what we saw the final prices of these phones be at $699 for the 8 and $899 for the 8 Pro. But honestly, after using them for a week now, I have nothing bad to say about the phones based off of their price points. I mean, you do honestly finally get a true flagship device from OnePlus. As you mentioned, wireless charging and IP68 water resistant and dust resistant rating are there. And those are the main features that have been lacking from OnePlus devices for the last couple years, and people have been begging for them. But of course, those things come with a price. So, I mean, you have to pay to have those extra features, and all the other manufacturers have been doing it for years. But still, $899 for a true flagship device that, honestly, this is comparable to the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, which is a $1,200 device. So you get what you pay for, and you definitely get a lot with that, especially with that display. It's honestly, you've been using it. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. And, one of the big differentiators around the display, like I have to say the display is incredible, is that you can set it to 120 hertz. So last year's OnePlus phones were locked at 90 hertz on the top end. Now they've reached the 120 hertz. Samsung was the first to do this with the S20 series, first major manufacturer to do this with the S20 series. But even on the Samsung S20 devices, if you did 120 hertz, you were locked in at 1080p. So it was like you had to choose. Do you want the super high res resolution on the display and a lower refresh rate, or do you want the higher refresh rate and lower resolution? And OnePlus is saying, we get it. It's a battery hog when you do that, but we're going to let you do it anyways. And so you have the option to turn both of them on. And I'm telling you, don't do that if you don't want your eyes to get spoiled for eternity, because things, I mean, it's like liquid. Like when you're flipping around the UI and stuff, things feel just liquid and just, oh yeah, it's really nice. It steps up the game.
Liquid, huh?
On top of that, they added 240 hertz touch sampling, so you get
that's right.
pretty much double the response rate for when you're moving your finger across the screen or just tapping something. Most devices that are on the market right now have 120 hertz touch sampling. So you touch the screen, it's double the quickness as far as response goes whenever you're doing something, which makes it feel that much smoother.
Yeah. Yeah. So they, I'm still working on my full review. My full review is going to be on Hands on Tech this upcoming Monday. So it's going to be out a little while later. I can't remember, and I apologize, Nick. Did you post your full review? Is that one of these links or
not yet?
Not yet. Okay, I didn't think so.
It's coming later this week. I had so much to get done, and honestly, I've had a week to play with both of them, and I was going back and forth between them, so I didn't have enough time just to dedicate and dive into one. But my pro review is going to be coming up later this week. Yeah,
4510 milliamp hour battery on the 8 Pro, 4300 milliamp hour battery on the 8. If you're doing the 8, pricing starts at $699 or $799 depending on whether you get 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, or 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. For a pricing perspective comparison, the OnePlus 8 compares. I mean, if you wanted to compare that to the OnePlus 7T. That was $599, so it's a step up. But really, one thing that I'm actually kind of surprised, I guess I'm not surprised because I loved the OnePlus 7 Pro's design. And I mean, these things are basically identical except for the camera area.
It's missing one major feature, which I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed.
The pop-up camera.
Doesn't have the pop-up camera.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
I thought the pop-up camera was revolutionary and innovative and one of the best integrations of that. It's one of my favorite things about my 7 Pro, but sad to see it go on the 8 Pro. That's sad.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, the design, if you liked the 7 Pro design, this feels the same. It's just so nice. See a lot of pushback on the rounded edges on the display on these devices. And I mean, you either like that or you don't. A lot of people don't seem to like it. I think it feels nice, but I understand that sometimes you end up touching inadvertently, when you're just trying to hold the device.
It was what you do when I first got the 7 Pro with that same kind of cascade feel. You had a lot of phantom touching going on and stuff like that. And honestly, it wasn't until you get the hang of it and how to hold it. It's kind of a real subtle thing that way. But it is just a beautiful. I mean, it's a nice design in the 7 Pro, and it seems like they've iterated in the right direction on the 8 Pro, at least from the photos and from this stuff I'm seeing here.
Well, and then you mentioned photos. I know you weren't talking about the photos that they take. But we're going to talk about that because that's another element of OnePlus devices is that all along, they make all of these gains on design and the devices look and feel and the experience and everything like that. But then when it comes down to the camera, it's always kind of like, and it's a fine camera. I feel like I'm still kind of testing out the camera on both of these devices. The camera systems are definitely different between the two. But if you've got the Pro, you've got 48 megapixel main down to 12 megapixel photos, 48 megapixel ultra wide. So you're not skimping on the ultra wide, and that also actually folds into the macro mode. Which, holy cow, I love the macro mode on the 8 Pro. Macro is just such a cool mode. I wish that we saw that more. I know that it's isolating to what types of photos you can take and everything, but I love that mode. 8 megapixel 3x hybrid telephoto. The max zoom there is 30x, and then a 5 megapixel color filter. And Burke, in the dock, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it so it's easy for you to find. I did a quick, I was like, what the heck is this color filter thing? And it's a special lens dedicated to color filtering, which really seems like a trick that's kind of unnecessary. You can kind of see they recommend that you use this in a setting where you have like lush greenery and a blue sky. So I went outside and I took a picture of a couple of my trees. It was a nice sunny day. And you kind of see like the result of it. Like I have no idea what I'd use this photo for, but it's kind of neat to look at, I suppose.
That's a great picture. That's awesome.
It almost looks like the tree is made of snow. But
Yeah.
I mean, how often are you going to use this? Like, I don't understand. Maybe there's people out there that really love their filters and everything. I'm probably not going to use it a whole lot. So dedicating a single lens to just that feels a little bit like overkill. What do you think about that, Nick?
I do think it's overkill. I mean, they could have spent their money elsewhere or reduced the price just a little bit. It's one of those things where, people are calling gimmicks and, just saying you're throwing hardware at something that's not even something that people are asking for. To spend money on hardware for a color filter camera lens, I mean,
yeah,
I could have thought of something else to add if they're going to spend an extra $20 to $30 on that, probably.
Totally. That's kind of how I feel too. But then I haven't spent an insane amount of time with the color filter thing. I think it appeals to a certain group of people. And don't get me wrong, there's probably that group of people that's like, oh wow, that's really new and interesting. Like a lens dedicated to color filters. It feels kind of a strange place to spend it when you're creating a device that you want everyone to buy, and everything occupies a certain amount of cost and everything. So it seems like an interesting inclusion there. But anyway, so I will say the pricing, having their top end be $999 at the most spec'd out. I think it's funny when they were announcing it, they said, even the top of the line is less than $1,000. Yes, by $1, you are absolutely right. So I mean, you can, yeah, that's a really great thing to point out. $1 savings. It compares to the Samsung S20 series on features, and it is less expensive still. So when you're comparing it that way, they're kind of still doing their thing. But no matter how you slice it, $1,000 is pretty expensive for a phone. I still feel that way. It's kind of hard to undo that. So